If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thanks, Jenaye, for joining me today. It's so good to have you on, Jenaye. It's a good time to have Jenaye on as a guest on this podcast. So welcome to the New Chemist. We're glad you're listening. Feel free to download this podcast on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and a variety of other platforms. Here on the New Chemist, we discuss chemistry, which simply put is a science of change, as well as careers, community research, and COVID-19. We're so happy you're tuning in. My guest today is Jenaye Burrows, an MBBS candidate at the University of the West Indies. Thanks for joining me today. It is so good to hear from you. Just briefly, I'll inform my audience about you. So me and Jenaye go way back, like way back, like all the way back to high school. I mean, that's a long time ago. That's like 7 years ago or 8 years ago now.
Very long.
Yeah. So, I mean, Jenaye is currently studying medicine. She's done a BA at Liberty University. And she's a really intelligent young lady, and it's really good to have her on. She's a leader in her own age, stage, and right. So it's definitely a pleasure and an honor to have Jenaye on this podcast. So, Jenaye, what have been your long-standing interests in the field of science?
Well, David, first, thank you for letting me be here. It's a pleasure. I would say that my long-standing interests, one being in the fact that I am studying medicine and I am 1 year out from my MBBS degree, and I'll finally be a doctor fully. My longstanding interest is just to advocate for patients and to give them the tools that they need to create healthier lifestyle and healthier livings, to decrease hospitalizations and so that they can live a good life. More importantly, though, in the field of medicine, I think that my longstanding interests also have to do with mentoring and mentorship with pre-medical students as well as medical students, because I truly believe in diversity in medicine.
Mhm.
And when you look at the statistics, there are only about 5% of Black physicians in the world. And that number itself is astounding. And I feel like there are a lot of unrepresented minorities in medicine.
Mhm.
And what drives me is being able to mentor those behind, because I know that for me, I didn't really get the mentorship that I think that I needed through my journey. So
Okay.
those are my interests.
Okay, that's interesting as you said. So mentoring and also diversity. So that's good. That's good. And decreasing hospitalizations. So I'll just offer that same question. What I'll ask you is, how were you able to overcome the barrier in which didn't have access to a lot of mentoring? How did you overcome that? How did you get through that?
Well, a lot of that had to do with confidence in myself and just overcoming the barriers that people placed on me. And I will never forget, there have been speed bumps along the road. Like, for instance, when I was in college at Liberty University, I was two person. So during the third year, fourth year, you're deciding what you want to do. You're applying to schools if you want to do like a postgraduate education. And I had asked my advisor what he thought about me applying to medical school. I wanted some guidance on to how to go about it. And basically he told me that he didn't think I should apply for medicine.
Wow.
I think he had told me, he gave me a different suggestion of what he thought I should do. And I also remember my organic chemistry teacher. Now, organic chemistry was, it was tough. And the professor that I had, he was also very tough. But I asked him for a letter of recommendation because I did think that I displayed, good
Aptitude.
skills, right?
Yeah.
And he basically told me, he said, I think you should, I wouldn't write you a lot of recommendation to go to medical school, but I think maybe you should do nursing or something.
Wow.
And
And look at you now, almost finished with your MBBS. Take that.
yes, and at every level, I think that there are persons who are going to try to discourage you and dissuade you from doing what you want to do.
Mhm.
But for me, I realized that I had to take control of my future and what I wanted to do
Yeah.
and carve out those paths for myself, even if
Mhm.
others weren't willing to help me do that. So
Yeah.
those are some of the ways that I've overcome that.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting you bring that up. And we'll discuss more about that in the podcast. But I've listened, just a quick note on that. I've listened to somebody just mention in their discussions or in their speeches, how they were trying to apply to some Ivy League school and someone looked at them and told them they were not cut out for that. And come to find out they attended two different Ivy League institutions, Princeton and Harvard, and they've done really well. So yeah, you can't let people chart your course. You chart your own course.
Yes.
So
And I find that just like another note is that sometimes those persons who tell you no and who try to shut the door in your face, that just gives you the fuel that you need to continue going.
you
Yeah.
have to reappropriate that. Yeah, reappropriate that and use that as fuel. Some people coin that off, describe it as the "I'll show you" response. In that, yeah, you said I can't do it,
Yes.
so I'm gonna show you that you're not
Right.
you're not the last word on my destiny. So how do you maintain view of the bigger picture in your career and in your life in general? How do you keep perspective, Jenaye? Especially speak about the time in which you were like dealing with COVID and all this other good stuff or bad stuff, however you want to phrase that.
So honestly, it's difficult sometimes to keep perspective. I will say that. And during my time studying, like you said, COVID, but even before COVID, after my first year of medical school, I was back home in the Bahamas and I was supposed to leave actually. I was scheduled to leave, but I stayed behind for like a family wedding and something. And that's when Dorian hit. And I was stuck in the storm. And I think the fear surrounding that in and of itself was just out of the norm because that was my first major hurricane at home. And the hurricane stood still for like 2 days.
Yeah, 72 hours. Yeah.
And after the hurricane, it was just devastating destruction. I was happy at the time to be home with my family because I thought about what would I have done if I was in school at that time. But I was just thinking like, I'm supposed to go back and leave my family in a time of crisis. And I actually had to, so I helped out. I tried to do some volunteering before I left, but I had to take basically a refugee flight out to Nassau. Wow. And then I had to go back to school. And I think that year itself was a lot of tragedy. I lost one of my cousins as well in a tragic accident. And along the way, I think it made me realize that medicine kind of takes some things from you, the journey itself, because you're away from family. There are big life-changing events that are happening when you're studying for this thing that you're supposed to be dedicating your life to, but you're missing moments. And so I had to look at it in a different perspective in that this will pass and that this is just a stop that I need for the rest of my life. So it's difficult keeping perspective because when you're in the midst of it, even in COVID, when you're in the midst of COVID, it's like, this is something terrible. But for me, COVID allowed me to come back home and be with my family for a little while. And I hadn't been able to do that for so long. So it's keeping the perspective in that, yes, bad things do happen or things are occurring and it may not be something that you enjoy or that you like, but realizing that everything is working for your good. That's how I have to look at it, that everything is aligning itself for the better, for a bigger purpose.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. Yeah, because no matter uh, for academic paths, whether it be postgraduate or even undergraduate, many times you are missing things as you prepare or as you go through those journeys.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're missing things. But
Mhm.
and you just have to acknowledge that. But I think that's a part of the sacrifice that you make because of the reward
Mhm.
you want on the latter end of the journey. So just for
Yes.
example, you could think about the grocery store. There's a sacrifice that you have to make when you go to the grocery store. You could be doing something else, but you need groceries to cook and to eat.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So how have you been adaptive and creative in the fields of science? Where would you say you have been creative? Where's Jenaye's creativity come about?
So, um, I'm always trying to think of things that I can do differently or change or make things better. In terms of creative, one thing that it has been my little creative outlet is I started a blog back in 2019. So this would have been after I think right after the hurricane. I had started a blog. I always wanted to do it because, like I said, I'm interested in mentorship and um, inspiring the younger generation, paying it
Mm.
forward. And so I had started a blog where I document my journey through medicine,
Okay,
and
okay. Check you out, Jenaye.
that's a way that I basically have a little creative outlet, but I still get the opportunity to share my passions of medicine, food, whatever it is. It's the checkuplog.com. And that's something that I am neglecting actually, just because of the stress of school and everything else. But that's one way that I've been creative.
Okay, that's good. That's good. It's good to have a blog. I've seen a lot of people on YouTube who do the exact same thing, so people could follow
Yeah.
along with you as you're going through it. That makes it more
Yeah.
enjoyable. I think not just for the person themselves, but also for the people who are watching you and cheering you on. So yeah, that's good.
Mhm.
Yeah. So how did you seek or find the right environment for you to thrive scientifically and intellectually? How did you seek it, or how have you complemented to the environment being a place where you can thrive?
So, um, that's such an interesting question. So, in some instances, it wasn't really a choice in terms of seeking out, like for instance, school. I know for college, I didn't really choose where I went to college, but um, I think regardless of the environment, I've always tried to find individuals or clubs that I can grow and mature in, where I can be
Mhm.
surrounded with people who are at the same intellectual level, who can inspire me and encourage me to do better.
Mhm.
So in college, I actually created the Caribbean Student Union at the Caribbean Student Association at Liberty.
Okay.
And so that was one way that I was able to find, people that I could, be inspired and be around them. Now, here in medical school, one way that I have kind of been able to find the environment to grow is through community service.
Yeah.
So I'm the student representative for the American College of Physicians
Okay.
with internal medicine at my university. And so one thing that we like to do is community outreach events. And most notably, one of the things that we recently did, we went to a Haitian church in the community.
Mhm.
And they wanted us to do a clinic there because a lot of the members don't go to the clinic due to various reasons, whether they're scared of immigration or they don't think that they'll be treated fairly. So
Mhm.
we did a clinic there, and we were able to serve almost 100 persons
Mhm.
and give them their checkups, their blood glucose, screen for hypertension and diabetes and all those stuff, and just counsel them with health. So that's something that I'm also passionate about, and that's something that fuels me. And so finding, those individuals who are willing to come out and service the community in that way is has been very important to me. And also, so that's just some of the ways that I've been able to surround myself with people who can help me to thrive in those environments.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's good. You're the student representative for the American College of Physicians in terms of internal medicine. That's good. That's good, Jenaye, man. This
Yes.
is good. So what have been your most effective and impactful ideas to date? What would you say what idea are you using now? or what strategy that you're using now has got you this far in terms of being a medical school candidate at the University of the West Indies? What strategy, what time management strategy, what technique, what study approach, what's helped you get this far?
I would say that there's two things, probably. The first one is to always be adaptable.
Okay.
And whether that's in my study methods, whether that's in, in the hospital, just learning how to interact with different people, you want to be adaptable because there are various different personalities that you will encounter at the hospital. There are so many different things that you will encounter just anywhere in the world. And so I think being adaptable has helped me to get so far. Also discipline, but just being adaptable, as well as just continuing to never stop learning. So obviously I'm in medical school, so there's just a lot of information that I have to learn. But I think in life in general, being able to be willing to continue learning and to continue unlearning things that are not serving you. So I'm actually reading this very good book right now called Think Again. And it basically talks about the ability to unlearn things that are not getting you ahead and be willing to learn new things. So there are some things that we learn as children or that our parents teach us that they learn from their parents. But in this current generation, some of those things just won't cut it, So you have to be willing to kind of shed those things and learn new things. And in medicine, of course, I'm just always reading and I'm always trying to build on the knowledge that I have because it'll serve me. And it's honestly so surprising how many times I'll remember something or I'll be able to think of a concept that I can't remember, but I read it maybe 5 years ago. And so those are the two things: basic adaptability and being able to learn new things.
Yeah, that's good. So I could relate to that too. In terms of when I was in organic chemistry, one of the things I would do, I had a favorite show on Discovery Channel called Gold Rush. And I used one of the characters to come up with a mnemonic for one of the regioselective rules. So in terms of Hoffman's rule or Zeiss's rules, for example, there was a character named Todd Hoffman. So tert butoxide T, Hoffman, tert butoxide facilitates Hoffman's rule or results, or the products follow Hoffman's rule when you use it. So outside this, I can relate to that a lot. So Jenaye, how do you maintain a balanced life given all your responsibilities and accomplishments? So how do you keep your priorities in check? How do you stay level during all of this?
It's very difficult, David. It's so difficult. I think that I'm honestly always juggling something. Okay. And I recently saw this quote. I shared this little thing on social media, and it basically said, I'm trying to juggle things financially, but I'm always also trying to get enough sleep. I'm trying to keep on top of my work, and I'm also trying to spend time with my family. So it's a constant push and pull. And I don't think that I have perfected it. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that you will never truly find a balance, but it's just realizing that certain seasons in your life require a different balance. So right now for me, I am finishing up medical school, and more of my time is required to just, finish and prepare for the next step. But also I try to balance it by spending time with my family, and I'm blessed that now I'm back in the Bahamas, and so I'm able to spend a lot more time with my nieces and see my family a little bit more often. And so where my cup is being poured out at work, I'm able to come home and get my cup filled up again. And so I think that is a balance that has been working for me. Like I'm not reading as much as I want to read. I still don't get to catch up on my Netflix shows like I want to, but I am satisfied that, the push and pull is working for me right now. And so, it's a balance, but I have not reached that equilibrium as yet, but it's working for me.
That's good. I like what you said. Different seasons of your life require a different set of priorities that you have to work through Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So how have you been successful as a student? How did you get into UE? Like UE is a good school in the Caribbean. How did you
Yes.
get into UE? And how have you gotten this far? Like how were you able to stay in this long for UE to being close to finishing? So how did you get through? What if you were to break down your success thus far to date in UE and at Liberty? What would you say has complemented tremendously? Will it be networking, time management, study skills, your friends, the clubs you are part of? What has complemented to your success?
So I will say probably the number one thing is discipline.
Discipline. Okay.
Yeah, so I've always been a very disciplined person, but just continuing to keep that discipline, and I don't know, it's a discipline thing, I would say. Even to get into UE, I did well in my pre-medical courses, and a lot of the applications too were looking at, community service outreach and letters of recommendation, all that stuff. So I was always involved in community service in at Liberty. And even back home, like when I would come home, I would do community service things. And so I think that kind of helped in getting into UE. I had applied to two of the schools, but I wanted to go to Jamaica because I think that the Jamaica campus is the best one.
Jamaica. Yeah.
And so when I got in, I was honestly, I will say, when I had applied, I was very nervous and I didn't think that I was going to get in.
Okay.
I think it was more of an imposter syndrome thing where I didn't think I was going to get in, and I was waiting for them to reply to me. And I honestly had like a little midlife crisis and thinking, if I don't get in, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Like David, honestly, I spoke to my parents and I was like, I don't know if I should apply to dentistry school. Like, do I really want to be a doctor? Like, and they had to basically say, Jenaye, you've done everything that you can. You have applied. You've worked hard. Just leave it up to God.
Yeah.
And yeah, like there's a whole other story about like my whole UE application thing. But when I got the letter that said that I got in, I was ecstatic. Now, staying in UE, I don't think that it's as hard as
getting in.
No, I just don't think it's as hard as people make it seem. Like, yes, medical school is tough. But I will say with anything, it's a constant building on what you've learned the prior year and continuing to build and being able to continue reading. Like UWE's motto is read for your degree, and they mean you will read. So I think I can't all contribute it to myself, though. I will say having a good set of friends who are able to study with you and go over questions, like that's vital. Surrounding yourself with the right people, I think that's incredibly important, as well as networking. That also is a factor. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to being disciplined and having a goal in mind. And I've always been a very goal-oriented person, and looking at the future, like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to do that by any means necessary. So if I need to put in the work, I will put in the work. And I think that is what's kept me going so far. And just realizing how close I am to finishing, because time has flown by and I'm so close. And so it's like, I'm not going to give up now. It's like, I'm almost there.
There you go. I can't give up now. That's good. This is good. I feel like I'm getting inspired. I have to re-listen to this. Just add that one snippet. That's good. That is good. So how have you maintained vision and teamwork in your environment? How you keep the collaborative spirit going with your friends and stuff like that? What do you do in med school to keep it going?
So one of the things that my friends and I do, we try to, it depends on like whatever rotation we're on, but we definitely try to go over questions, when we're coming up to the exam. Right. And we're always trying to bounce ideas off of each other, because at the end of the day, there might be something that I'm strong in where my other friend isn't strong in. And I can explain that to her, and vice versa. I may not understand something and they may understand it and they can explain it to me. And so it's just being collaborative with each other. And I realized that collaboration is better than competition.
Mm-hmm.
All of us have the same goal in mind. We all just want to graduate. And at the end of the day, having that team mentality, it's not just about helps to translate to even with your patients.
Mm-hmm.
It's because when you finish medical school and you're working on the wards, you're working with a team. And so you have to have the adaptability to work as a team player. And I think, having those study groups with my friends and having, being able to text each other and ask, okay, so what do you think about this? And sharing stories about, sharing like case reports of
Case studies,
patients,
yeah, high level thinking. Case studies,
so that helps a lot with everything. So that's how I've maintained teamwork.
And also, one of the things I found, some of the most progressive or really advancing clinics, they're multidisciplinary. They have a variety of people, a plethora of specialties working together to solve the cases and different perspectives. When you have a high degree of expertise, though the perspectives may be different, when they are good in their craft, that complements to solving the issue or at least ameliorating the condition. So yeah, that's good. So why did you choose MBBS as opposed to dentistry or any other path? What made you choose medicine? Why medicine?
From I was 6, I think, maybe 5 or 6, I always wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
I think it might have been partly due to the fact that my uncle, Dr. Hayward Cooper, was a obstetric gynecologist. And so I don't know if that kind of contributed to it, but I always knew that I wanted to be a doctor. And going through school, I think it was just something that I gravitated towards. I always loved the sciences. Me and you were in physics and chem and all of that
every
together.
class together.
And even in college, it was just something that I enjoyed. But in terms of choosing between dentistry and like medicine, I don't really like teeth, and I don't think I could spend my days looking in mouths. But just having that patient interaction with someone and being able to fix something for them, to make someone better than you left them, someone and there's something wrong and you're able to aid in
the solution process.
I think that is what really drove me towards medicine. Now, MBBS versus MD in the US, it just made financial sense to me, to be home and to have a cheaper tuition. It made a lot of sense to me.
That's good.
Yeah. So after I finish, I will have to do some additional training, and who knows if I'll go to the US, but MBBS just felt it was the best choice for me.
Yeah, and it's, I think it's an established fact, some of the best doctors in the Bahamas have passed through UE.
Yes.
The best, one of the former prime ministers, as well as one of the leading obstetrician gynecologists on Grand Bahama. They passed through UE. So the fact that the evidence, the
evidence is clear.
The evidence is clear. Opinions might vary, but when you base your decisions and opinions on the facts are clear. Yes. Some good doctors come out of UE. So that's a fact. So do you have any advice to those wanting to pursue what you're currently working on? What's the advice to someone who sees this and says, wow, Jenaye is really doing a good job. How can I do what Jenaye is doing? What would be your advice to them? I want to go to medical school. I'm in the Bahamas or I'm in the Caribbean, and I want to go to UE. What's your advice to them?
My advice is to not give up. If it's something that you want to do, continue to pursue it, and can pursue it with all your might. And doors will open for you when you are persistent. Continue striving, whatever thing you can do. If you say to yourself, I want to go to medical school, study for those exams, whether that's the MCAT, get your exams in order, whether you need to do another degree to kind of make your application better. Surround yourself with people who are doing what you want to do. So whether that means you're volunteering with doctors in their clinic, whether you're shadowing them, getting any type of experience that can aid you in your application for medical school, do that. never stop learning and never give up. That's all I would say. Never give up. If it's something that you really, really want to do, and people come up to message me all the time and they ask the same question, and I'm just telling them, continue pressing on, continue pressing on. There will be doors that will open for you, but don't give up.
Yeah, it's important to have vision in mind, to be persistent and to persevere. So what has been some of the most beneficial advice that you have received, Jenaye, as we conclude? What has been some of the most beneficial advice you have received from your parents, from a teacher, or whatever the case may be? What's been some of the most beneficial advice? What replays in your mind when you have hard days, or what keeps you going?
So recently, I will say, my parents give me advice all the time, and they give some of the greatest advice. But one of the best advice that I've received recently, and that I've just been implementing recently, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, but one of the best advice is that always ask, always shoot your shot, and for me, as I am transitioning, about to graduate and figuring out what I'm going to do
for residency.
Yes, it's never be afraid to ask someone. Shoot your shot. If you want something, go after something and ask. Don't be afraid of no, because people will tell you no a bunch of times, but all you need is one yes. All you need is one yes. And so for me, that's been working. I have just been shooting my shot. I've been asking for help. I've been, seeking out these mentors and not being afraid of hearing the word no, because when you hear the word yes, that one yes can change your life. And I think that applies to so many things in life. And it's like, the Bible tells you to ask, to knock, and you have to be confident and do that. And I have found that a lot of people in this world, they've gotten to where they've gotten, not because they're qualified. Now, I'm not saying that people aren't qualified, but a lot of people have gotten to where they've gotten because they've not been afraid to ask.
Yeah, that's true.
You have to be afraid. You have to not be afraid to ask, because closed mouths do not get fed.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
And just as we conclude, I'll just say these words were credited to Mother Teresa. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find sincerity, serenity, and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. Thank you, Jenaye, so much for joining me today. It was so good to have you on as Thanks for listening. We're glad you were able to tune into this podcast. Once again, this is The New Chemist, where we discuss chemistry, which simply put is the science of change, as well as the other sciences, careers, community, research, and COVID-19. Thanks again for listening. Note, the views on this podcast represent those of my guests and I.